Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This just came out, Inside Star Citizen, how we work, level design. Let's react to this thing, shall we?
Inside Star Citizen is many different things to many different people. But at the center of it all is our desire to educate about the very nature of game development itself. And in this week's part 2 of our 3-part experimentation and format, we lean into that aspect and explore some of the foundational philosophies that guide just one of the teams that are continuously working to iterate and improve on the persistent universe as it prepares to grow in this year's upcoming Alpha 4.0. Now, where last week we met the team, this week it's how we work level design with the folks from the Frankfurt level design team.
Well, level design, it's probably one of the hardest things to describe in game development.
We take gameplay elements and we take the environment and we just bring all that together.
It is more than the sum of all of its pieces. You can't just kind of speed level design a forest log cabin. That's...
Let's be perfectly clear. It's been years. It's been years since they did anything that could be considered new gameplay. Level design on what exactly? The library of buildings for these relics, that's level design? Okay.
Not enough. Like, what is the player doing there? What does it mean? Why does this thing exist in this space? What can the player do as well?
You've got...
But let me make this perfectly clear. Library means the assets, all of these buildings, right? The relic buildings, right? All of these things, buildings and junk and pieces of ships, all of this stuff that goes into a library of things they built. But making a level means you actually play doing something here. Most of these places, you just go there, pick up a box, and that's it. There's really very little or actually no playing in these places. And the same can be said about Pyro. Pyro, we've gone there just to pick a box. It's dead in terms of you playing in these places and interacting. Look at how poorly designed it is, that if you go to the relic places or these settlements and you buy something from the shop, you can't, because there's no local inventory anymore, because we cannot have nice things and you cannot have convenience, so there's no local inventory anymore. So the building itself meets no purpose because there's no place to store what you just bought. It is crazy, but that's the idea.
What does it mean? Why does this thing exist in this space?
Yeah,
what
why?
can the player do as well?
You've got the environment art that makes the art itself. This is not us. We have the gameplay teams that make all the gameplay elements, and this is not us. What we do is we take these two things, we combine them together and make it cohesive environment for you guys.
Oh, so you're the problem then. You're the guys to be blamed for the no game to play part. All right, okay. So now at least we see your faces.
We design the space itself, and we also accommodate everything that goes inside of it.
A lot of the things that you use, like hangars, ATC, I hate to say it, transit systems.
Elevator rides.
Wait, you're responsible for the elevators?
Elevators are our problem, yeah.
At least they admit it, but again, I mean, in all seriousness, it's been a few years since we've had elevators. Is that what they've been busy on? They've been busy on doing something else we haven't seen? That would be nice, but it would be a lie, because CIG, if there's one thing we know, is that they hype and use every little asset that they have so as to create hype, marketing, promoting, advertising. They use everything. If we haven't seen it, it's simply because it does not exist.
No, we're just a setup site.
If you die in the elevator, that's actually a problem from the coding side. We just we're throwing them under the bus.
Is it possible in a sandbox game to have level design?
Yes, because you have to consider all of the individual constituent pieces and why they need to exist together. You can throw anything in there, but you have to account for, like, does this begin to break the game? So you have conversations with economy, you have conversations with code, you have conversations with system design, mission design, and you have to figure out how all these pieces, again, stitch together.
So there are 6 principles for good level design.
First is readability. This basically means clarity in your environment.
You got to make sure within your layouts.
Let's make it perfectly clear. The level design team is showing a level design that's been in game for like at least, what, 3-4 years? The same old tired bunker, that's what you've been designing? Has there been anything new? What, the new locations,
that everybody can understand where they need to go, what they need to do.
All the affordances need to make sense. The typical one could be, I've got a door in front of me. How do you describe a locked door from an unlocked door?
For example, you're fighting an AI, and they can read easily the elements, the gameplay elements. You need to understand your cover space. You need to find the AI within the space. If the AI is in a black area, you will not see it at all. And this is very important for us. We really focus on this kind of stuff, and we make sure that anything you interact with within the environment, you can see as clear as possible.
The next is flow and leading lines.
It's creating a good composition of all these things, from layout, lighting, some props, a good mix of combat spaces or like combat encounters, and then time for exploration, and then doing a mix between both.
We make sure that you're not going always on a straight line. We make sure that you're not spending 2 hours walking from one space to the other.
In Pyro, you'll come across a lot more players as we funnel them into a certain space with a concentration of missions, for example, or things to do. You know, that is flow to us. On the flow level, that is higher on the chart. And then certain areas will be a bit more on the lower end of your pacing. Leading lines is a compositional technique.
Some examples can be you are following the cables from one interactable through to another area to interact with another element. You're being breadcrumbed along, you're being led along these leading lines.
With Pyro Station, you have the core element, you have the arms, point.
I love the honesty. With Pyro Station, there's only one station in Pyro that's been copy-pasted 4 or 5 times, giving different names, and you're supposed to think those are 4 or 5 different starting locations. They're not. It's the same station copy-pasted time and again, and they just changed a little bit of the levels, but it's like the rest of the stations in Stanton, where it's the same one, right? The exact same thing with the 4 starting locations in Pyro. There's only one station. It's incredible.
Towards the center. It's a very simple example, but more on a larger scale. But we look at it also on a room basis.
We're trying to direct you through to a discoverable place over here, or trying to direct you through to like a vent. We're using light and cables to navigate you through these spaces.
Third is options. We want to give you guys multiple options so you can complete your objective the way you want it.
In context of our game is giving the player the opportunity to approach certain situations in different ways, or get an idea of the situation in the first place.
You have straightforward options, the combat route. You have a more sneaky option for players that don't like to engage in combat so much. Or you can also have like a puzzle route for players that like to do more interesting environment interactions.
Escaping from prison, again, years.
Then there is clustering. Clustering also falls into the compositional techniques, or more in the layout side of things.
Clustering means that you start like bringing objects together to create something a bit more natural.
You put importance on things by grouping certain things up into clusters. A specific power example would be the outposts, where you have a big landing pad in the center, and then you have groups of clusters of buildings that are arranged around it, and they form like points of interest by themselves.
We've not always been successful with clustering, but moving forwards into the future, especially with Pyro, we're taking a renewed effort to concentrate and cluster things properly.
Finally, there's scale and proportion. Scale is important in how you vary it. If everything is large, for example, nothing is large anymore.
We are the one that defines all the metrics for FPS, but also for ships. We're talking about ships that have a few meters to some ships that have hundreds of meters. And we need to make sure that the transition from A to B feels always smooth and natural, right?
If you, for example, come from a maintenance corridor or a small little packed little vent and expose yourself to this big room, you'll get a more likely an aha moment.
So we still have a very big open spaces, but condense the gameplay space a bit more. So the players don't have so much options to walk around. but still get like the sense and the immersion of like a big open space.
Proportion is just also feeds into scale.
So you can use proportions to be able to scale up, like what is kind of the background space, what is the foreground space, and what is the midground space of like what is immediately interesting to you as a player, and what is in the background that's not yet relevant to you. So you can land at one outpost on Pyro 2, and you can see yourself in a sort of like habitation outpost village. Down the hill, you can see there's a refinery area, but the main feature of this place that you were drawn to initially was this massive mining tower. These become like your immediate foreground, your midground, and your background. But again, you can always come into your ship and go to this massive mining tower. Therefore, this becomes the new foreground. You're always orbiting it, you're transferring around. This becomes your landmark to orientate yourself around all these other spaces nearby.
Traditionally, in level design, you start out with a pre-production phase. This is where we ideate, conceptualize, we gather references, we do sketches, we do top-down layouts of our brain map, put things together.
We then go into white box, which is literally going into the editor, start mocking things up in 3D, creating the space, and defining where the gameplay elements are. We have a shop on the right, shop on the left, your elevator, transit over here. We work at different scales at this point, and we define basically everything in the location, but with very, very basic shapes.
And then we hand it over to art, so the focus lies more on art for gray boxing, making things more pretty, with us still having an eye on it to see that the original concept is still intact.
And then finally, we'll move into final art, and the level designers will be able to kind of keep all of these locations, like the intent of the location is kept consistent. It doesn't veer off
That's the
too much into something that's too big.
That's a Galleria in Pyro. This is the one that I say it's copy pasted. So you go to a Galleria in any of the stations, it's the exact same thing, copy pasted one from the other, and it's very how should I put it? It's very anti-climatic to see, you know, for example, the noodles sign. Oh, it's the relic, it's broken. Well, that's okay once. If I copy paste this entire thing, all of this, down to the little piece of packaging or the missing letter on the sign, I copy paste the exact same thing 4 times, it is extremely immersion breaking. It is extremely anti-natural, because you can get away with that in something like the stations we have in Stanton right now, where it's, well, you could say it's like modular, right? They build all of these things like in modules, and they all look the same because they are all the same. Something like this is supposed to be unique, having down to the missing light bulb and being copy pasted one to the other. It really looks terribly bad.
We'll be able to kind of keep all of these locations, like the intent of the location is kept consistent. It doesn't veer off too much into something that's too big or too small. This is the original design direction that we wanted from beginning through to end.
Once a location is released, it's not finished for us because there's always maintenance and additions that we do. When there's a new functionality, a new gameplay coming in, we go in and we add them to all the locations. We retrofit the locations. So whenever there is a bug in the PU, we have to maintain these locations. So we would go into New Babbage and fix AI placement. So
you never do that, never, ever. Like, there's bugs, like in this, there's a store in, it's like the one clothes selling store in New Babbage that is broken, and you cannot buy the jacket that the mannequin is wearing. It's been broken for years, so I don't know exactly what they mean by it, but no, there's been bugs here for years that have not been fixed.
Or shops not working anymore, but mostly...
Exactly. There's a bug in the shop in New Babbage, so it's, it's been there for years. It's not fixed ever.
Level design is also about coordinating with every team.
So be it with like lighting, mission team, environment art, audio, narrative, they work more or less in their pockets, and then we try to keep an eye on like the big picture to bring everything together and look that everything is coherent and cohesive.
What is important to us, or what we really want you to experience, is a nicer flow in the stations. I think what we realized with Stanton is, you just take a ton of elevators from place to place. We kind of want to optimize that for you. Make it a bit more efficient so you don't spend a lot of time going from A to B.
We are trying to bring, for example, the clinic and the habitation right away into the shopping area and trying to make it much more compact.
At the same time, we really, really want to offer some good gameplay content within the stations, outside of missions that you can go into and discover on your own as you explore.
We try to improve pyro stations with all the lessons we've got from Stanton.
And now for outposts, each location has to have its own identity. Like, does this outpost fulfill the need for a combat space? Does this outpost fulfill the need for like a social space? Does this outpost fulfill the need for like a puzzle space? All these factors come into play and come into consideration when creating a whole new location.
We want you to be able to discover little points of interest around the outpost. It's kind of feathered. If you come across an outpost, there will be multiple sub-locations around it. These could be like villages around it. This could be...
There's really nowhere near enough of any of that. Anything that would add real, like, and using the word exploration in a game in which you're flying around in a damn spaceship, having a room being exploration, that is, you know, yeah, that is rich. But there's really nowhere near enough of even that. Not even going into real exploration as you would expect in a space game, right?
Derelict settlements that are abandoned and you have to go into and can find potentially loot in.
And once you've landed your ship, you are no more than a short walk away from the main reason you've arrived at this outpost, which is to trade. We want to encourage the use of ground vehicles to be able to pick up your cargo that you bought from this place, load up your little Drake mule, and drive it over to your ship, load that ship, and then fly out with your goods.
We wanted to create a location that felt real. So you had, the logistic is there. The AI created roads between the different points of interest within the outpost so that it feels logical for a player to walk in or to traverse.
Pyro is always dangerous, so any social space can turn into a combat scenario. So you need to be able to duck into cover at a moment's notice, even when you're doing nice, easy trade and socials. So we have to provide you with opportunities for cover and exciting FPS combat scenarios.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that they obviously are not very good at. How exactly are you supposed? And this is something that Kamurel brought up in his channel. How exactly are you supposed to do cargo hauling or buying and selling when you're at any moment anyone shows up and shoots you? Oh yeah, it's PvP. Yeah, sure, it's PvP, but there's no way of having that go along with the possibility of anyone at any moment gunning you down. Oh, you have to bring guards. Really? What for exactly? So as to make how much money? What kind of incentive do I have to go along with anyone else and play? Oh, no, we cannot give you money because that goes against what the sales team tells us, which is no one makes any money in Star Citizen because if not, it hurts our ship sales. And that's where all of this falls apart. That's the biggest problem that the company has. The biggest problem that the company has is their core belief is all we care about is making money. And anything that goes against that, we will not do. We will just not accept. So what kind of gameplay do you have when the only progression that you have, because only focuses on ship sales and making money, is making money in games just to buy the ships in game, which at the same time they don't want you to be able to buy. So as it is right now, as of this very moment, you do missions for what, 10, 15K, when ships cost 20 million, and at the same time they get wiped periodically. Why the fuck would you even bother doing a cargo in a place where you will be PvP'd and pirated or griefed or whatever it is? Why would you even bother when the reward is so little? Now, you give me a big ass reward, I will go on global, find someone that wants to tag along, and it's worth for all of us. But they don't do that. They're not increasing the kind of reward so as to be worth your time. So that's maybe one of the biggest problems they have. They have a crisis identity. They want to be a video game company that is in active development, but at the same time, it's a ship-selling business.
There's a lot of things to consider for an open world game that on this scale. You have to account for multiple, situations and have players also be able to deal with all kinds of circumstances. So it is a complex undertaking. It's a challenging one, but this is what we want to account for in Pyro as much as we can.
It's sad. As much as we can. What is it that he means by that, as much as we can? As much as we are allowed? That's the only thing I hear. When I see the guy looking as if someone kicked his dog, like as much as we can, all I see is the guy being lectured by, no, but it would be great if the guys, if players got this reward, or they earned this ship. Imagine earning a ship in Star Citizen by playing. Just imagine that, yeah, heads blowing. Imagine earning a unique ship in Star Citizen because you did something cool, because you played a mission. Not talking about doing Xeno threat yet another time for a fucking armor. No, it was even that, I don't even know. But imagine doing something that gives you a reward, or at the very least, that moves you towards that end. Like, you've gained reputation, and you gain more and more and more, and eventually the Xeno threat guys or the defense forces, they give you your own little custom Pisces, a patrol version of the Pisces, which has upgraded guns, or it looks. Imagine how cool that would be. We cannot have any of that, because it only has to focus on, if we're going to be making a new ship, it has to be sold first. It has to be something that gets sold, and not only first, only sold, and never earned in game.
Level design matters, or is important, because we think of a very broad scale and try to craft and create a great experience for you as the player.
Level design ends up being greater than the sum of all of its parts. I get to talk with all these different disciplines at CIG, but also get to kind of like hold the hand of the player and curate that all the way through.
We focus on the player experience. We look at all the features that exist, and we try to bring them up all together into a cohesive.
The player experience, the level design, all of this that these guys are supposed to do, that, I don't know them personally, I guess they're great people, but this is all terrible. Honestly, all of this is terrible in game. You're even actively told to just go out there and do your own adventure. That's what you're being told in Spectrum or in Global, or these people, even the developers. It's a sandbox. Go do your own game.
Piece of environment that feels really fun for the players.
Do you always succeed?
No, but it's not always like within our hands, but we always try our best to, within the framework we have, to create like the best possible experience for you guys.
Yeah, fun is something that Star Citizen has not been for a long time, especially since 3.22.
So we've learned a lot from our time in Stanton, and we love hearing all the feedback we get from you as players. We want to take that all on board and begin establishing ourselves forward when we come into Pyro.
What we really want to do also is balance out gameplay with the visuals. I mean, in the past, we've seen a lot of focus being spent on the visuals and less so on the content. This needs to switch around and find an even plane. And level design is just one way we're doing this in Pyro. We as level designers really want to make Pyro and Stanton in the future a great experience for the players. From a flow perspective, boring you less, making things more efficient for you.
Boring us less. That would be great, my man. I'm all there with you. Boring us less would be hugely appreciated. But as you see them, they talk about, well, we'll do this in Pyro because we're not doing it already in Stanton. You're not doing it with the game that we have now. And they know they're not doing it. And it's probably not even their fault. Maybe these guys have some awesome ideas. But it cannot go against the core principle of CIG, which is make as much money as possible, screw everyone trying to play a game here. No, you cannot get any progression, any sense of reward. All of that, it goes against. No, just more time sink. You know, they're talking about making things more efficient. You know what would make everything a lot more efficient? Not wasting an hour for my ship to be loaded, or 30 minutes claiming a ship, or all of the insane time sink that they insist on with a fixation that is almost like a clinical, like a mental disorder. But it's not a mental disorder, it's just greed. The idea of, instead of playing, get bored, go buy a ship. They got this nailed down pretty good, but it is exactly what these guys are supposed to do, which they either are not able to do, they cannot do it, they don't have. I think it's more about, that's not what the company wants. They talk about it, they don't actually do it.
As you follow the gameplay loops that you want to follow and offer you gameplay content that you can just discover on your own.
Yeah. gameplay content that we could actually discover. That sounds fantastic. Too bad we're not getting any of that. Too bad it is all just more words, more hyping and copium and hopium, and just, yeah, the level design guys seem like great people. Great for you folks. They've lost a lot of the talent. They've lost a lot of the people that really wanted to make new game content. These guys are supposed to be doing that. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it, because I haven't seen it. Pyro is just the same as Stanton, and nothing is showing any indication of things changing anytime soon. Unfortunately so. But well, that's what these guys are supposed to to do. See you next time, guys. Take care.